Last year I bought one of those scrolls that has, those iron things, cheap, has candles in it, and I loved it.
Sure, it's easier than managing a fire.
It's easier to manage a fire, and on a day like today, it's prettier than a black.
Well, we have gas logs, we don't manage a fire anymore.
I'm ready to do that. I never thought I'd say that either.
Yeah, I didn't either, but it is just wonderful.
And, one day I'll probably say, let's go get an artificial tree, and I've never thought I'd ever say that.
I have one of those too.
I have one at the beach. And we have a tree at the beach, and I put it up in October, and it's got beach stuff on it. And it's kind of neat to pull the attic thing down and pop it up there.
I maintain that when they build houses, they should build a Christmas tree room, so that you can just put it in.
That's a good idea.
Roll it into the room, and next year pull it back out. That's a Christmas spirit.
And also, just utilitarian, you need sockets underneath each window.
Exactly.
Extension cords, and that's a reality. If you're going to put those candles in there, you need an outlet.
And one switch that turns on all the time.
I know some people do that, they just have that one breaker just for those.
My son's house was supposed to have that, but we forgot in the process.
So what I've done is, I've put my candles in and just left them on day and night, and said, heck, I'm not gonna try to cut these things
Right.
on and
That's a
on.
good idea.
And this year, I only put them in there because that was the only convenient room to do it. Every other room is extension cords.
So we don't you love living down here?
I love this house, yep, I do.
I love the location.
And I was telling Kristin that almost every lot is built on there. There's only a few.
I'm coming at every little piece of dirt, somebody's building something.
Right.
And the other.
Are you ready for us?
Oh, Zoe's going to start.
Okay.
We went through John's history this morning, and I was saying that it was fun looking at the names, that the names are great.
Yeah.
And we went back just as far as our grandparents. And we always heard the story that there was this man and this woman that were married, another man and that woman that were married, and then somebody died, and then the man and woman married, and then Kay and Brinkley were born. But that's not the story at all. I understand there was a divorce. Is that correct?
No.
Okay. First of all, there was a Lois Swain and a William Thomas Pratt that were married, right?
And she died.
Okay, so she died, and they had Norma, Mary Hilda, Selma, William Ralph, and Blanche. They had 5 kids.
That's correct.
And then Mary Susanna Brinkley was married to John Morris.
Right.
And did someone die? Did John die?
John died.
Oh, he did die. So there was no divorce.
No, John was Francis' grandfather. And do you know anything about him?
Not a thing, because he died long before.
Well, right. I didn't know if your mother ever said anything about him.
What did he die of, do you know?
I don't know, but can I come in on some of this? With John and Mary Susanna, she was, when I went through this in the history part, I did some thinking about what's the context for this family. The history teacher and me did the context for the family, and how, when they finally came together and they had Brinkley and Carrie, what all had they experienced? Because I think all of that colored what my mother and what Brinkley and Vera experienced. And our grandmother, Susanna, married John Morris, and when she married him, she was 8 years older than he.
8 years older.
She was. Now, unless I read it wrong, unless, you all might.
Did you know that?
I didn't until Joyce brought it up, but I can fill in from here, and Brinkley just told me this recently, I did not know it, that after my grandfather died, John Morris, grandmother felt insecure financially, even though her parents lived right across the road, which I did not know. And Mr. Pratt owned a store. Did you know that? I did.
Brinkley had told me there was a store in Tampa. What kind of store was it?
Probably a general store, just like you would have found in the country, thousands of them in the country.
And she married him strictly for security.
But but, you know, Brinkley said that. But she and John, your mother was born in Portsmouth.
Yeah.
She and
No,
John
my
lived,
mother was born in Norfolk.
oh, Norfolk, anyway, it wasn't.
And I
spontaneous.
didn't know that until Albert died, and the obituary said that.
Right.
Which one's Albert? Oh, her husband.
No, he's my mother's brother.
Oh, that's
That's the
like,
Albert who lived in the shack.
well, is it William Albert?
Yeah.
Okay, so
There
it's
was
William
Albert, and there was a
John.
and mother.
John Edgar?
Uh-huh.
So he's John Edgar.
Albert was your real
Brother.
Real brother.
brother.
Well, the story goes he fell off porch when he was a baby. So help me God, that's the story.
That's what they say.
Uh-huh.
I think he was born that
I
way.
think
What
he
is that
was
way?
retarded.
He's retarded?
Slow, limited, he would be in a special education class
Oh,
today.
really?
Yes.
So his name, you called him Albert,
Uh-huh.
and John Edgar was Edgar, right?
I guess it was John Edgar.
It was John Edgar.
Yeah, and he lived in Hertford, and he embezzled money.
Right, he was the
He's the
embezzler.
embezzler. That, and he had a daughter who we met,
That was, his daughter was Pat,
who we met.
right, and granddaughter was Marion.
And they just loved John Edgar. The stories they told that day at the luncheon were, oh,
Well, I did too, because I didn't know as a child the trouble that he'd gotten into.
well, is Brinkley the only one who knows that?
No,
Or-
Mother
No,
Okay.
My
That was
sister
just-
said that too.
You never knew that either?
And Grandma mortgaged the house.
But I don't
Uh-huh.
remember Edgar at all.
Pay off, so he wouldn't go to
Okay,
prison.
and part of the context too of our mothers, and I'm including yours because she was a child in that house too, was that they saw Edgar look after them, and they saw Albert look after them, because grandmother left her resources, whatever there was, that is the land and the house, to Albert. And our mothers never got
Anything.
they got nothing.
Right.
And they had, my mother carried that as long as she
Oh,
lived.
Brinkley still does too, in the sense that, just being from a poor root.
She was angry about that.
And then when our other grandmother died, she got slighted again, because instead of grandma's inheritance going to dad, it went to the 5 children. It didn't go to
Right.
the spouse. Right. So she got slighted again, and we heard that story. So.
But our grandmother, when John died, he left her a widow. She was 39 when he died, and left her with those 3 children. And Aunt Vera, I got this on paper. When she was almost 39 when he died, and Edgar was 8, and Vera was 5, and Albert was 2. And he died in 1911. And there is evidence that that house was built in 1912. That is the house that she came back to. But she stayed a widow for almost 5 years. So yes, I think that the marriage between her and our granddaddy was one of convenience, but she didn't marry right away.
And she called him Mr. Kraft.
She
Did
called him
Mr. Kraft marry right away?
Well, all right, Mr. Kraft, his first wife, as you said, was Lois. And Lois had been married before.
Oh, now was that the divorce?
No, but there was a divorce, but I couldn't think of one. Oh, yes, I do know too, but that's another story. I don't know the full story there, but it's kind of strange.
And who is it?
It's some of Norma's folks, some of her children.
There's Norma.
Yeah.
But William Kraft's first marriage was to, his wife Lois was married before, and from the records, it seemed that she married the first time at 14. Her husband died when she was like 15.
They had no children.
Well, yes, they did.
Ooh.
In John's information, it says that there was a child born to Lois after her first husband died. I never ever heard of that child, whether that child died or not, because he never came into any of the family dynamics anywhere. And then Mr. Kraft married her, and he was a young man then. He was like 23.
And the child didn't come with them.
Very mean man.
Very, well, you know what I want, and
I remember
You
him.
do remember?
I do remember him.
Like how many?
And when somebody would come driving up, he'd run get the Bible and sit on the front porch.
Like he was
and read the
pious?
Bible. Yes. Oh, he
He
was
was
an
a
awful
Bible
man.
thumper, kind of fire and brimstone?
Yes. Oh, he was the meanest man. He mistreated everyone.
well, you know, we had a question, and maybe you can answer this. Was the mistreatment, absence of affection,
Partly, yes.
absence of affection, as well as, was it mouthy? Was
Yes,
it verbal? Verbal.
It was verbal abuse.
What kind was it, Frank?
Well, every word out of his mouth was ugly. You know, you were never right. Everything she did was wrong.
You mean grandmother?
And she was just the most beautiful person you ever wanted to meet. Do you remember her, Joyce?
Well, see, I was 6 years old when she died.
Yeah.
My memory.
When she died? Well, Joyce, how old was she when she died?
Well, if I was 6, then you add your age to that.
How much older am I than you?
6 years.
6 years.
Is that right?
I was born in 32.
I was born in 38, so that's 6 years. So you were 12.
Well, and she was blind, as I'm sure y'all all know, from cataracts.
But let me stop and ask you right there, because if you had listened to my mother, you would have thought, Pat, you disagree with me, but this was my impression. You would have thought that grandmother was blind all of my mother's life.
Right.
But that wasn't so, was
The
it?
impression that,
It was
and mother said that she had to do all the cooking and taking care of the house and.
In fact, I didn't know it was cataracts until Brinkley cleared that up for me. And she said at that day and age, they didn't do anything about cataracts. You know, you couldn't have an operation like you do today. And she said, don't you remember how her eyes looked with the growths over her eyes? And I do remember them being really cloudy.
But how long was she blind before she
I
died?
can't remember when she wasn't blind.
And it's progressive, so
Yeah.
more blind than.
But she cooked, she sewed, she wrote me letters. The address would be splendid.
Do you have any
I've saved it, Joyce, and somehow it has gotten misplaced, which breaks my heart. She was a plump lady. She wore.
I have a picture. I have the picture. This is the original picture. These are Bobby's grandparents.
Oh, I
they-
didn't get my glasses on.
To me, she looks like Aunt Vera.
I think she does.
Oh,
I think
Vera.
Aunt Vera had inherited her
The
mother's
shape of the face.
bone structure. And the way he looks in that picture is the way he always looked. Grumpy.
Yes.
Stern.
Just kind of.
Can you say one nice thing about him?
Well, that's what I used to say.
Yeah, brought me ice cream.
He did, your parent. One
He
word.
died when I was 5.
And you remember
I
that?
remember.
With her father.
Yeah.
And she,
I was a
her
little
thing
bit
about
afraid of
Susanna is that she
He was
was
imposing.
Very strong-willed
She was
woman.
the strongest woman I ever knew.
Who, Vera?
Her mother. And I think she
I think
meant
all
that,
of them were strong-willed.
I think she meant that.
Mother, your mother, Brinkley, all of them.
The men in
All
the family are
the
weak.
women of the
Right, that's
family.
what we've always heard.
Absolutely.
The men are weak, the women are strong.
Okay, can we go through the family?
Let's go back to Granddad, to Mr. Kraft. Okay?
Mhm.
When sometime in there, and it must have been after his wife Lois died, he then came to Shaw County and started that store. Now I can't relate to that at all. He started that store, and it must have been just down the road from where our grandmother lived. And he was a widower not quite 2 years. when he married grandmother. She'd been a widow 5 years. So she lived in that house. Brinkley says that she built part of the house and not all of the house. In other words, you know, Brinkley has a painting Pat did of that house. Brinkley said that when they got married, he added something to the
Well, the
house.
house was, you know, across this way, and then it had that porch
back.
that went back to the kitchen and dining area. Remember that?
Yes,
That long
I
way,
just
you know,
went and took
outside the
pictures
house
to go to the
kitchen
to
and
do
the dining room.
The painting.
Uh-uh.
I don't think I ever went in the house.
But Albert lost everything, everything.
Well,
And then Uncle John gave him money for years. And after Mother took care of Uncle John all those years, then Albert got everything that he had.
okay, that,
Uncle
okay, see,
John.
that's, we need to get to him. We need
Yeah,
to get to
we
him
have
because Francis can tell you more about that than
More
I.
than you want to
More
know.
Well, let's start on the other side of the family that we don't know much about.
Okay, and
Let's go.
But when Mr. Kraft was a single parent, he cared for these 5 children?
well, I have a feeling, and this I can't base on anything I've ever heard. But when the mama died, Norma was 17, Mary was 16, Selma was 14, Ralph was 7, and Blanche was 3. I have a feeling that Norma and Mary looked after the family. I have a feeling that's what happened. Because, so that was the granddaddy and the granddaddy and his children over there. And then when he married Susanna, remember she had those 3 children,
Right.
and when she married Susanna, or when he married Susanna, he was 48 years old, and Susanna was 43. So when they got married, the children that came into that house already were Ralph, who was 9, Blanche, who was 5, Edgar, who was 13, Vera, who was 10, and Albert, who was 7.
So only 5, Selma, Hilda, and Norma never came in.
Okay, Norma got married in December of 1915, just before her daddy got married. Mary got married the same month that Mr. Kraft got married to Susanna.
Obviously, he didn't pay for their wedding.
Oh, I don't have anything to pay for.
And Selma, hey, can you all relate to Selma at all?
She was the religious fanatic, wasn't she?
No,
Or that's
on the
another
other side of
Selma.
the family.
Okay, that's another Selma, okay.
I don't know what Selma was. I would say that Selma.
Bitter. She was bitter?
Very bitterly.
Okay.
There's a lot of
Yeah.
bitterness in this family, isn't there?
Uh-huh. It spilled over into all kinds of things. I don't know how, we just were lucky, we just all grew up. Selma always thought that she was of the manner born. She expected to be treated that way. And even if you ask her 2 daughters now, Dorothy and Helen, I expect that they were, Dorothy's a very honest, direct person. I think that Aunt Selma was not a whole lot better mother than her daddy was a daddy.
And I think Helen is a lot more than Selma.
I think
And
Helen was
pretended to be
affected.
more than she is.
Right, probably.
But you left out Hazel.
Okay.
Hazel Dorothy.
Yeah.
Hazel. Now I think,
Hazel, Dorothy, and Helen.
Okay. And Helen has told me that her mother always thought Hazel was perfect, and that Dorothy and Helen were less than that. But Aunt Selma married when she was 16.
She married Uncle John's daughter.
Okay, right. She was 16. She got married like 4 months after Mr. Kraft and Susanna got married. Pat and I talked about it, and we kind of think in the back of our minds that Selma had gone to live with Norma. I'm not sure Selma ever actually lived.
I have no idea.
I don't either. But if it were, it would just been a short period of time.
Yeah.
However, she married at 16. She married Susanna's brother.
This is where it really
This
gets
is where it gets really complicated.
See, Brinkley used to say to me, I'd say, who is Selma? And she'd say, well, Kristin, she's your aunt, great aunt, she's your aunt, she's your cousin.
Right.
It's very mixed up.
It is.
That's how it's mixed up. And Selma at 16 married Bruce,
Yeah.
Uncle Bruce.
And he was a saint, according to himself.
Well, of course, in her later days, she said she'd been married to two wonderful men.
She had all
That was acting right. And you remember it the way you want to then.
Was she the one who lived then in that old historic house?
Exactly.
Brinkley just died because they sold it, I think.
Right.
And she said it should have stayed in family. Brinkley always was saying, maybe he would stay in family, maybe he would stay in family. And she loved the old place that she was in. And then Hazel, I remember Hazel had a pink living room.
Yes,
She was the white hair.
Yes, Hazel is the one
She
that's...
moved from Lincoln, Nebraska back to Seminary when her husband retired and built a house close to South
Right, to take care of someone away.
Yeah, I think she was there to look after her
To
mother.
do for, yeah. And she's in a hospital now. She has Alzheimer's.
She's still alive?
Yeah.
Not in Selma, Hazel.
Oh, Hazel, okay.
But in Selma.
And Selma hasn't been dead very long.
In Selma, 3 or 4 years.
What?
I said, Selma hadn't been died, what, just 2 or 3 years ago?
Maybe 3
I
or 4.
lose track of time. I think it's a little more than that.
I remember that I was in Lynchburg at a superintendent's conference and didn't come back, or didn't come back, I forget, but I didn't. And it would have been maybe like 1997 or 19.
Well, honey, we found it out through reading it in the paper.
Oh, my.
Helen did bother to call us and let us know that our aunt had died.
So they're like your half
You're
cousin.
getting all the dirty laundry today, girl.
But that's all right.
That's okay. Hazel is the youngest one?
Hazel is, no.
No, Helen is the youngest.
Hazel. I love these names, Hazel.
That's a great name.
Hazel's
A lovely person.
right.
Lovely.
How did she get lovely? Was it problem?
I have no idea.
She had
She's
one
totally different from the two sisters. She's the most gracious, fun-loving person. I just can't say anything but nice things about Hazel. Dorothy, I never knew that one.
Mother liked Dorothy a lot.
Did she?
I remember that they always had, both of them read a lot, and Dorothy had a real good sense of humor. I can do remember
dry
that.
sense of humor,
And she's still around and doing now.
Around where? Where does she live?
Williamston,
Williamston, North
Roseland,
Carolina,
Maryland,
But back in Selma, I have wondered if that first marriage was different from Uncle Walter.
Well, she was pregnant, the reason she married Uncle Walter.
Well, okay, I thought that.
She was 16?
No.
Uncle Bruce died.
Uncle Bruce died, and Aunt Selma was 29 maybe when he died. She was a young woman, and she was left with 2 daughters.
Uncle Bruce, and then she married, the second husband was Uncle who?
Walter, my daddy's brother.
Right, that's where it really gets.
Oh, that's a coincidence.
No matter where I turn, no matter where you turn. See, isn't that amazing?
Well, that's what Brinkley used to say when we drive through. She'd say, and we had our car broke down once, and I said, well, what are we going to do? She said, well, Kristin will just knock on any door when we lay it all on.
You're right. She married my daddy's brother, Uncle Walter, and the reason she married him, she was pregnant. And in those days, if that happened, you married. And they fought like cats and dogs every day that they lived together.
I mean,
It was awful.
You said she was pregnant, was,
Helen.
but from the first husband or?
No,
the second
from
husband,
Walter.
Because she was,
That's what I wanted to understand.
she was a widow for several years. Because
I never knew that.
Uncle Bruce died. Uncle Bruce died. Well, I don't know when he died, but it clearly it was Uncle Walter. We know they got together once.
Yeah, we. And I don't think they ever slept together again.
No, and busted it. So, you know, sometimes I try to think about Helen and think about what she grew up in. She has to be, I mean, she grew up, they busted each other. They were all,
All the time.
All
I
the
mean,
time. They
I
never said a
remember.
kind word to each
they
other.
didn't. And see, if you drop in on it, it's rather entertaining. But if you had to live in it,
So you would see it? They wouldn't just be
Oh.
polite for company?
No.
Oh, no.
No, I think they got worse when people were around.
well, you know better than that. Give some examples. Did they ever come to your house and visit? Because after all, your daddy was
Yeah,
involved.
they did, they did, but they bickered the whole time they were there. They bickered about everything. And Uncle Walter cussed like Sam. Can't please her, that kind of thing.
And were all these tobacco chewing people?
I don't remember.
That's what I remember about the men in the
My
family.
daddy was the tobacco
Right.
grower. I don't think any of the others did.
Right.
I don't recall that. Uncle Walter smoked. Uncle Will smoked. I don't remember anybody else chewing tobacco.
That was one household.
It was indeed.
But Aunt Selma really did think that she was better.
She was a little above.
Why did she think that? What on earth
Lord
would have
only
given her
knows
that?
what would have given her that idea. I do not know. Maybe
Sometimes
Brinkley
it's just a
can.
defense skill, you know, that I'm gonna rise above this and I'll rise above my
I
ego
think
too.
that she thought she was Scarlett O'Hara or somebody else.
I know. And Red was going to come again. But, you know, maybe Brinkley can shed some light on that. I'm sure that if my mother was here, she would have some choice words to say about it.
Okay.
Oh,
But-
some choice words.
Choice words. Now, back to this family that came together with those 5 children. Remember, there's Albert on the one side who's limited. And then Ralph comes in. And Ralph is your gun toting.
Right.
That's, you know,
Brinkley
Ralph.
swore that was not
A
a
dream.
true story, that he never had guns.
Oh,
See, that's
yeah.
why I didn't want her here. She doesn't tell the truth about these things.
I mean, my mother and dad even told the time he got upset at somebody down at Rankin's store, which is one of the general stores there in Sunbury, and told him he was gonna go home and get his gun, and he was gonna come back and kill him.
But I downloaded.
He did do
That's what
that.
I heard. That's what I heard
didn't.
that night.
I
He was
didn't.
marching with those guns. I
Oh,
could
I'm
hear them
sure.
talking, and he was saying, "Go kill him. Go kill him."
Did he drink?
He
A lot.
drank every day. Grace
Moonshine.
said he went down and got moonshine. She didn't say, she just said that's the thing that men do. He's going down to be with the men you know.
Well,
And
and that's what men did. Maybe they do it on a more sophisticated level, I suppose, but, in a place like Chowan County or Gates County, they went to the store and gathered around the fireplace and drank. And I
Ever
was,
anything to go with the drinking? Any checkers or dominoes or
they tell stories, or did they just?
probably told stories,
fun stories?
But what's
Plays
amazing
of
to
poker.
me
play some poker.
is how slow Ralph and Albert were. But the rest of the kids seem very intelligent.
Women. You just said,
Why?
except John Edgar.
Well, I think
Oh,
John
yeah.
is probably smart. I mean, he didn't fall in that category with Albert and Ralph. I know that's always amazed me. These 2 people came together, and each of them had a son who was limited.
Oh, so Albert and Ralph came from different families.
Ralph is on granddaddy's son.
Right,
The
okay.
Ralph and then the Albert, because there was 5 and 3,
that's
but when they
amazing,
moved together,
isn't
there
it?
was 3 and 3.
So they weren't related by blood at all.
They were not related at all.
William Ralph, William Albert. That's probably why they were Ralph and Albert.
There were 2 Williams moved in together.
And when they got married, when grandmother and granddaddy got married, Ralph was 9 and Albert was 7.
They pretty close in age.
And then Aunt Vera was 10, and Blanche. Now, I don't know whether your mother ever talked about Blanche or not, but I think they were closer to Blanche than they were, because she was a child in the
They were
house,
closer to Blanche and closer to Mary.
to Mary.
Uh-huh.
Norma was
Mary.
not. Mary is,
Oh.
Mary is another daughter of Mr. Grant.
Where's Mary Hilda?
Mary
But
Hilda.
she didn't move into the home.
No, because she got married.
Right.
Norma's disposition was much like her father's.
She was a mean woman too. I don't remember her father.
Bitter, not pleasant.
I don't even remember meeting Norma ever.
I remember the name.
Yeah, that's me, I remember names, but I don't remember these people.
And William Ralph was married to Grace,
That's it,
right?
Yes.
And
We all
Grace,
remember her.
the crocheting lady.
That's
And
right.
the quilter. She
Yes.
thought Ralph was great, though, didn't
Oh,
she?
that-
They got
oh, Ray.
Hey, Ray. Get that right, Ray.
And you know,
They weren't embarrassed.
they were an embarrassment.
Your mother used to turn out the lights, she'd lock the door when she saw them coming.
She did.
And
And
they
Daddy
would come and they would
Your
stay
mother-
and stay and
Yeah.
stay.
Because they wouldn't leave.
they wouldn't leave.
And they didn't have anything
And
to
mother was
say.
too polite to tell them it was time to
Were
go.
so
The conversations were so
boring.
boring.
Shallow.